1. I recently moved to Weed, California, a small town next to Mount Shasta, for work. I'm an avid hiker and love exploring, so naturally 2 days ago I decided to go hike the mountain on one of my days off. Not entirely sure why, I decided to drive my car very deep into the forest surrounding the base of the mountain, as far as the dirt road would allow me. It was around 3 p.m. with a clear sky, so I was very confident and enjoying the scenery as I got out of my car and started my hike, heading closer to the mountain. At first, it was your regular everyday hike, lots of birds and squirrels around. That smell of nature that fills your lungs as you walk across the terrain. It wasn't until I reached a small dried-up river that I noticed something was off. As I stopped to look at the dried-up river and take pictures, I noticed that it was strangely very, very quiet. No birds chirping, no signs of squirrels or other animals, and even the sound of the wind you hear when you're on a mountain seemed to be completely gone. At the time, I thought it was just an odd coincidence and started walking up alongside the river. But as I kept walking, and being able to only hear my own footsteps, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Not the kind of feeling that makes you think someone is outside your window watching you, the kind of feeling that makes you feel multiple people or things are observing your every movement, studying you. I've never had that kind of feeling in my life, but what happened after made me completely forget about that feeling. I suddenly started to hear something out of nowhere. That sounded like angelic humming or maybe a song with no lyrics. But it also sounded strangely electric, like the sound telephone lines make. It wasn't very loud, but enough to make me look in the direction it was coming from. I looked to the other side of the dried-up river that had multiple trees and other foliage, to see someone or something looking straight at me. It almost looked like a ghost with it looking completely white. But this thing was very clearly there. It almost looked like it was wearing a robe, but I couldn't see any feet, hands, or even a face, although it had an oval head. However, I could feel it looking straight at me, almost as if it was trying to remember my every detail. Even from far away, I could tell that its entire body had a very weird texture, almost like porcelain, but if porcelain was a silky fabric. It was very obviously not human. I was very understandably in complete shock and terror, frozen in place, kind of scared. We both looked at each other for what felt like forever, but it was most likely around 20 to 30 seconds. I very slowly started walking backwards. I don't think I took more than 2 steps when it tilted its head, as if it was curious or even surprised at what I was doing. All the while I could still hear that electric, angelic humming. And I swear it got a little louder when I took steps back. When I turned my head to look behind me, to make sure the way was clear so I could run, the song suddenly stopped. Abruptly, without warning. This shocked me, and when I turned back to look at the thing, it was gone. No sign of it anywhere. As soon as I saw that it disappeared, I ran as fast as I could, following the path I took back. Even after it had disappeared, and while I was running, I could still feel like I was being watched from all sides. I almost tripped a few times in how fast I was going. When I got to my car, sounds of animals and the mountain wind suddenly came back, but I was still scared out of my mind and drove as fast as I could away from the mountain. I've never had anything paranormal happen to me in the past, and I've honestly always been very skeptical of stuff like that. But this experience has left me questioning a lot of things. I don't think I want to go back in that mountain. I even had a nightmare about the experience. I'm not even sure what I saw or what to call it. 2. So I'm what you'd call a skeptic when it comes to pretty much anything paranormal, as I can usually come up with rational explanations for most supernatural occurrences. This, however, I cannot explain. The first time it happened was late 2020 during the pandemic. I was living in an absolutely tiny house, as it was all I could afford at the time, being a uni student and all. My room was so small that the only pieces of furniture I could fit in there was my bed and wardrobe. It It was on the ground floor, right next to the front door of the house, and due to this, I could hear pretty much anything that was outside the house. One night I was home alone. My housemates were at a party I wasn't invited to, and I did my usual routine of smoking a joint and reading some manga in bed. It suddenly became very silent, to the point where I thought it was odd that I couldn't even hear the wind outside. I usually can, because of the ridiculously thin walls. I chalked it up to me being too tired to carry on reading, so I decided it's time to go to sleep. I get off my bed to turn off the light, hit the switch and turn around, and holy fuck, there's someone sitting in my bed exactly where I was. This person looked like a woman in a sundress with a paper bag over her head. She wasn't looking at me or even facing in my direction. She was just sitting there, facing forward like a mannequin. So naturally, I switched the light back on, and of course she vanished. Needless to say, I didn't sleep well that night. Every now and then, when I'm trying to sleep, no matter where I am, I'll experience an unnatural silence, and then I'll see her. She's never looking at me, she never interacts with me. It's like she doesn't even know I'm there. Sometimes she'll be standing in the corner, facing a wall, other times she'll be sitting on a chair, or even on the foot of my bed, just looking forward. As soon as I rub my eyes, do a double take, turn on my phone's torch, or switch on a light, she's gone. I have no idea what she is or what she wants with me, but I've decided to call her Baghead, as that's literally all I can make of this situation. She seems harmless, but what I can't seem to wrap my head around is the intense fear I get whenever she appears. It's honestly like nothing else I've ever felt. Now, I've been in some horrifying situations in my time. I was even stalked by a tiger the last time I was in Bangladesh. But even that didn't fill me with much fear, as whenever Baghead visits me. I've experienced sleep paralysis a few times before, and let me just clarify, this is definitely not that, as during these visits I'm always conscious and able to move. As for drugs, I've been a month clean from all substances. The last visit I got was about a week ago. I was responding to some messages on my phone. Then that silence hit me, like I was in some vacuum. I then momentarily looked up just to see Baghead sitting on my bed facing the wall. My blood ran ice cold like a reflex. I faced my phone's screen towards her, using its brightness to illuminate what I could, and of course she vanished again. But holy fuck, I can't stop thinking about her. I have this horrible feeling that one night I'll see her, but this time she'll finally face me, and I'll see what's under the bag. Even just thinking about it has me freaking out a bit. It's gotten to the point where a complete silence has me feeling incredibly anxious, as it always makes me think she'll appear again. Has anyone else experienced something like this? What is she? What does she want? Why me? 3. I'll start by saying overall, I don't really believe in ghosts. How to explain? I guess I'm more paranoid about them, if that makes sense to you. So both of these incidents, I'm not saying they were absolutely supernatural. I'm simply saying I absolutely experienced these events and don't know what to make of them. But they were both pretty scary. The first was a long time. It was 1993, I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and we were living in a house in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My mom had recently given birth to my younger brother, so the sleeping arrangements were a bit off. My dad was working nights, so as not to mess with the sleeping schedule of my mom and the baby, I was sleeping in my parents' room in their king-size bed, and my mom was sleeping in the baby's room, which was also my room. One night I remember waking up and looking down at the foot of my bed. There I saw a group of 5 or 6 gray children huddled in a circle whispering something I couldn't hear. I looked for my dad, and I didn't see him. I crawled down to the foot of my bed to see what they were doing, and they all disappeared only to be replaced by a single gray child who stood there staring me down with a very evil smile. He stepped forward towards me, and I bolted out of the room screaming, woke my mom up, and she came out. Told her what happened, and we went back to the room. Of course, no ghost kids were there, but strangely, my dad was there sleeping, and I could have sworn he hadn't been there. This could be chalked up to a vivid nightmare, but it just felt so real. If it was some sort of dream, I have never again in my life experienced a dream anything like this one. Needless to say, I've also never saw the ghost kids again. The next one was much more recent. In 2018, I was teaching 8th grade social studies at Deddy Middle School in Houston, Texas. The school is over 100 years old and still retains some of its original rooms, such as the front office. The school is also notorious for the rough neighborhood it's in, and in the early 2000s, a student had stabbed another student to death right in the middle of a hallway. That's verifiable by a simple Google search. So I never arrived early, but I always stayed late. Sometimes I would literally be the last person to leave the school who wasn't a janitor. They had 3 to 4 janitors stay until about 11 p.m. One evening, I was clocking out around 7 p.m. in the front office. It was dark, and the only people left were the janitors, wherever they were. At this point, I was starving. In the front office, on one side, they have the principal's office, and on the other side, behind an old, heavy wooden door, a small hallway, where they had some copy machines, the campus officer's office, and a couple of supply rooms. In there, I knew they kept snacks, usually for students, so I decided I was gonna duck back there real quick and grab a snack before I left. I go to open the door, which had no electric anything connected at all, and as soon as I reached the door handle, something pushed back on me. It sort of felt like an electric shock. I have accidentally shocked myself by an electric fence before, and it was similar to that. But the difference here is, it felt like it only shocked my brain. Not only that, but with the shock, it felt like it pushed me back twice with each of the 2 shocks I got. The first one was lighter, but the second one was heavier and felt more forceful, sending my head back a bit. It didn't really hurt either, and I stood there for a second just kind of stunned that something like that just happened. And then I felt something that just felt really bad. Like I should absolutely not open that door. Like something didn't want me to open that door. Needless to say, it scared the crap out of me, and I hightailed it to my car. What this was, I have no idea, but it was a jarring and bewildering experience. I only ever told one other teacher what happened. She shared with me how she was late with a few students, and they all saw something in the hallway they couldn't explain. The school is definitely spooky, and even has an entire 3rd floor not used by students in years, science labs, and a lot of old school supplies from back in the 90s. 4. This is a true story that happened to me years ago, but I still remember vividly. I knew something was off whenever I was in a room alone, especially with my back to the entrance. I felt as if I wasn't alone, and whatever it was didn't seem to be looking for a friend, more a victim. I never felt this when I was anywhere but home, but it was still horrifying for any 7-year-old. In my bedroom one day, I was with my sister, and we were sitting on my bed playing Connect 4. I had just won when we heard a knock on my door. A solid knock from the knuckles. So I stood up and opened the door, and I didn't see my parents. We had cats, but they can't knock. I know what them scratching at the door sounded like. We walked over to my parents' bedroom. Their door was closed. We knocked and explained what happened. They were confused and explained how they were in there the whole time and didn't knock. We all brushed it off as a one-time odd occurrence, not thinking much of it. Looking back now, that's where we went wrong. A couple months later, I was in the basement with my sister, who was in the area off to the side, out of the way, and I was in the main area. The staircase was in the center, surrounded by drywall, and the other side was the workshop. So I was riding my scooter around the staircase, through the workshop into the main area. One of these laps, I saw just 3 heads floating in the workshop in a line. I don't remember the faces, but they were all that of a man's head. They weren't moving up or down, just facing forward, all in the same direction towards the staircase. I stopped as I was confused. I didn't see how they could be there. And they weren't dare the next slap. I found my parents and explained this to them. They were just as confused as I was. We didn't know what to do. I was only 7 or 8, so I'm not exactly what you'd call a reliable source. We didn't do anything, because we couldn't. Fast forward another few months, and I'm in the shower rinsing my hair. We had a mirror on the wall of the shower, and I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I looked up at the mirror directly. I saw a black figure emerging from the wall, just the shape of a torso and an arm extended at my left shoulder, about to make contact with me. Then it vanished. I heard a loud drop of water, like a water bottle worth of water had fallen into a bucket. But the only place there could be a bucket that I'd hear and not see is the closet behind the bathroom, and in front of my room. But the closet is full and no room for a bucket. I step out of the shower, terrified, without even bothering to dry off. I step out of the bathroom and tell my parents, who were sitting in the room next to the bathroom, what had happened. I was shaking and cold and could barely get a word out. My dad sat in the bathroom as I finished my shower. That was the last shower I'd ever taken in that bathroom. At this point, my mom admitted she felt like she had been watched too. When she was working, she worked at home from the basement. Fast forward, about a couple years back, my parents have a friend over who knew about this, and she was supposed to know about paranormal activity, and she said she felt a presence, not a good one. We also found a Ouija board from my mom's parents. None of us ever touched it. We gave it to the same friend who knew what to do with it. Another year or so passes, and we were talking with a family friend. My dad met him from work. Then he quit and became a nurse. He quit being an RN and became a priest. So we had him bless the house, and especially where everything happened. None of us have had an experience like this since. I do occasionally feel like I'm being watched, but a much weaker feeling. I told this story to some people from my BSA troop while sitting around a fire one night. One kid said he didn't sleep that night when he talked to me the day after. 5. When I was about 17, Dad had started renovating parts of the house. During knocking down walls in the living room and bathroom, I found tons of cool things inside, like a cart, papers from the early 1900s, random scraps of ornate wallpaper. Dad joked with me not to keep it, because then I'll start getting haunted. But to me, they were too cool not to keep. Things slowly escalated. I started experiencing sleep paralysis for the first time, and I never heard anything. Just felt like someone was sitting next to me, and would only happen if I fell asleep in the living room. Things started happening in my bedroom. There was a specific spot at the foot of my bed that squeaked bad if anyone stepped there. I was trying to fall asleep, and thought I heard someone by my door. Thought it was my dad trying to scare me because he did that often. Thought it was hilarious. I told him it's not funny and I'm tired. It felt like someone was in the room with me, and I heard that spot on my floor creak. Sat up to tell him to knock it off, and he wasn't in there. I crawled to the end of my bed and looked down. Nothing. Old house is settled, though, so I went back to sleep. Then started the nightmares, sleep talking that would wake me up. The first night I woke up saying, "He's not going to make it." I lay there confused for a bit, eventually fell back asleep. Then I had a dream that seemed like movie clips. It looked like a war infirmary, from what I could put together based on what I learned in school. There were 2 guys standing over someone laying on a cot. He was bandaged and sweating. It seemed like one person was just watching and the other was trying to take care of him. Woke up again and felt like somebody was standing close to me and staring. Terrified, I just lay there as still as I could until I finally fell back asleep. The next night I woke up yelling, "They're all gonna starve!" I felt that presence of someone standing and staring again. But every little hair in my body started to stand, and it felt like they were getting closer. I closed my eyes, and it felt as if someone was directly in my face staring at me. At this point, I'm begging that if anything is there, please leave me alone. I don't like you here, and I'm scared. Just like that, I felt like I was alone again, and my entire body relaxed. I fell back asleep, and that was the end of that. It was just a couple of days of terror, then like nothing ever happened. I thought I was absolutely crazy and wouldn't speak a word of it to Dad or anyone because who the hell would believe that? Even I thought I was going crazy. About 2 weeks later, and I don't even know why I picked it up because I never paid attention to it, I picked up our town paper off the table, and it was talking about our city's involvement in the Revolutionary War. It talked about a certain area. It was easy to tell it was my street and those surrounding because the names were all based on war events, being the grounds for camp and barracks. It explained how soldiers had to move due to an attack on both the soldiers and their crops, which were all set on fire. My dreams started to make more sense. But it all didn't at the same time because the war was long before the house was even there. Didn't find anything in it from that far back either. Again, all sounded crazy and like a coincidence to me at the same time. So the only person who knew was my best friend. There's my story. Now only one person, and all you nice people know. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 300. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you could please press the like button and share the video around with friends and family, and we'll see what we can do about having another 300. And we do have a little shout out to give to the author of story number 4, and it's Reddit user Mr. Person. Thank you very much, Mr. Person, for allowing us to use your story. Okay, let's see. Let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, if you had a haunted item in your home, and it made itself known that it was indeed haunted, but wasn't otherwise causing harm, it's just being weird and creepy, would you keep it? Would you move it or sell it to someone who wanted it, or destroy it if you could do so safely? I think personally I would want to give it to someone who would have more appreciation for it. I really wouldn't want it in my home, that's a personal preference. But I recognize that there are people out there who might have different ideas, and I respect that. So why don't you let me know what your thoughts are on the matter? Please do leave your answers in a comment below, and I'll look forward to reading them. With that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.